All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Vertical Presents webinar program. Vertical Presents is a monthly webinar program that delivers webinars that are important in nature and are designed to help you learn more about the many facets of communications. You can see what webinars are coming up by visiting vertical.com and navigating to Vertical Presents on the main page tiles. This month's webinar is on using remote workers to keep your business running during a crisis. This special and very timely webinar is hosted by Vertical's VP of Marketing and Product, Kevin Butler. During the webinar, please mute your microphone for the entirety of the session. If you have a question during the webinar, please enter it in using the chat function. At the end of the webinar, Kevin will answer all of your questions, and you can also email follow-up questions to us at webinar@vertical.com. The webinar will be recorded, and we'll send you a link to the recording tomorrow so that you can review sections of it or share it with your colleagues. You can also always access it again by visiting vertical.com and navigating to Vertical Presents. And that's just one more final reminder to please mute your microphone. And Kevin, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. So today we're going to be spending some time talking about remote working. And why are we doing this? Well, the need for remote working has never been more obvious. Pretty much, we've spent a long time telling people about the value of remote working, but now we don't have to do that anymore because this is the chart of companies that need remote working, right? Pretty much everybody does except for a very small section of the population. So we know the need is out there. We know it's important. The question is how to do it well and how to be successful at it. So we're going to cover that in four main areas. We're going to look at some best practices for processes and procedures for working with remote workers. We're going to look at resolving various technical concerns that you may have had pop up and see in your remote working experience. Then we're going to talk a little bit about video meeting etiquette and try and provide some suggestions in that area. And finally, we're going to talk about what's the next steps in thinking long term. What do we look at here as we move forward? When we're finished with all that, as Rebecca said, we'll try and take some questions. So first, let's start off by talking about best practices, ways that we can really build the best possible remote working environment for our entire company. The first one is to restrict work hours. One of the things that has become very evident over the last decade as remote work has increased has been that remote workers tend to work longer hours than those in offices. In an office, you have a fairly set time. You arrive, you leave. There are very clear boundaries to your time period. But in a remote work environment, you're living in the same place you're working, and that boundary gets really fuzzy. You can have people who start early, who finish late, who keep on working into the evening. We have notification methods such as email, chat, text messages, all which can come to you and tell you, oh, hey, there's an emergency, there's a problem. And so we have a tendency for people to work longer and longer hours. And the problem with this is the UN International Labor Organization sees this as a major way that leads to worker burnout. You get people who are no longer productive because they're spending so much time working that you're getting people who are not doing the job they need to. The way you can deal with this is by setting policies to clearly delineate work hours, to say for your job, for your specific role, you're working from this time to this time and not to work outside of those. One of the key things here is we're living in an ever-expanding world where we're working across the country, if not across the world, so we should be aware of time zone issues. If you're asking somebody to provide support, if you're asking for somebody to provide customer service, what is the time zone range that they're going to be covering? Remember, 9 a.m. Eastern is 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific. So if you're asking somebody on the West Coast to provide support for somebody on the East Coast, that can be a real concern there. Think about also in policies implementing no contact hours. I've got no email hours up there, but it's really broader than that. With the better tools for unified communications, you have the ability to automatically turn that off, and the tool set itself can restrict contact. So you can say, hey, here's the employee's work hours. Please don't send them chat messages, collaboration notifications, phone calls, etc., outside of those hours. And so therefore you can make sure for the time that your staff is working, they're as productive as possible. Now, of course, there's always going to be exceptions or emergencies, and you're going to have to deal with that. But the important part is not to make the emergencies the norm. Now, the other side of this is to be flexible in scheduling. One of the advantages of remote work, and one of the things that we can all take advantage of, is the fact that You don't have to have just the normal I arrive at work and leave at work at these hours and I work all the time between. You can be flexible in how the schedule works. This seems like it's diametrically opposed to what I was just talking about, but it's actually very complementary. You want to still be clear about what the work hours are and when people are working, but you want to consider being able to allow some flexibility. We all have more dynamic work environments. There are kids involved. There are pets. There are, possibly sick people, hopefully not. But those could be involved as well. And you have to account for all of this in your remote policies today. So one of the ways that we suggest this is to focus on goal and project accomplishment rather than just straight work hours. Rather than saying, oh, it needs to be an 8-hour work day. Anyway. I was looking at my bullet and I thought it was written wrong. But you want to look at what goals are being accomplished, are the projects being met, rather than necessarily exactly what the work hours are. You can once again use Toolset to mandate that people keep each other available and updated on when you're going to be available for work and when you're going to be off. If somebody needs to go do a doctor's appointment or other errands, they go for specific hours to the grocery store right now, for example. In those kind of circumstances, make sure that they use tools to let people know what's going on, let people know what availability is. That can be really, really crucial in this circumstance. So being flexible in scheduling really complements the making sure that people aren't overworking by setting work hours. Put the two together and have a much more successful staff. One of the funniest things on this slide to me is not the very cute baby. It's the age of the laptop and the phone the guy's using. I'm not exactly sure how old this clip art is. Another key policy that we see that really makes the difference working with your remote workforce is over-communicating, working very hard on keeping everyone in the loop. The number one fear of remote workers is that they aren't being told what's going on. And this is even worse for workers who are used to working in an office, but now in this current health crisis have moved home. They're uncertain as to the information they're getting. Are they being told everything? Do they know what's happening? And that uncertainty leads to doubt and leads somebody to be very, very stressed out. We've already got enough stress today, don't we? So make policies to ensure that you're over-communicating. Set a number of meetings, being able to communicate between departments. It may have been that the accounting department sat right next to HR, but now they're all at home, and so there's more separation. So make sure that cross-department communication is going on as well. Try and set regular meetings. For example, with my team here at Vertical, we do a daily 15-minute or less touch base every single morning. We just talk about what we're doing for the day, any problems we have, and that way everybody knows what's going on and they know they have a specific time to talk about it. We also use such tools as a common company knowledge base, monthly internal newsletter. We have communication and collaboration tools for chat, for creating collaboration rooms, for doing video conferencing like this, and they're all integrated into a single platform, so it works best for everybody to be able to use it. But all of these tools are all about communication. It doesn't matter so much if you over-communicate. That can be annoying, but it's much better than the reverse of under-communicating. My wife happens to work for a local museum here, and they're almost all working at home, and they have 2 to 3 meetings a day for the staff to get together and talk. Now, it kind of feels like over-communication, but that's much better than not having enough communication. And that's the way to err at this time when you've got people working at home. The more you can talk with each other, the better. You also got to work on ensuring good supervision, making sure that you're staying in touch with all of your team if you're a manager. Remote managers miss out on a lot of information streams. You don't run into people in the hall. You can't just walk down to their office. You can't see them in the break room. You can't look at them in the face and see their body posture and see if there's something wrong that way. You've lost a lot of these nonverbal and incidental forms of communication. So you need to replace it with much more formal forms of interactions. You need to think about what you're doing and make effort. So plan more meetings and one-on-one interactions. Come up with ways for people to be able to interact with you. Some of the ways are a daily interaction with each of your people on your team. Even if it's just for 5 minutes, makes a big difference. Schedule yourself a regular venue for discussion of issues and concerns. It's great to say, hey, my door is always open. You can always come talk to me. But the problem with that in a remote environment is there's a bigger barrier to that discussion happening. It's not just oh, I can walk by and see if he's not busy and walk into his office. Or I can just run into her and maybe mention, oh, I've got this family problem. There's an effort that has to be taken. So the best way to break down that wall that the effort forms is by scheduling a regular venue that explicitly says, hey, here at this time, I'm going to ask you about your issues and concerns. I'm going to ask you your problems. Maybe 99% of the time it's, I got no problems, everything's great. But it leaves the venue open. It leaves the possibility of being able to talk with people so that they know when they do have an issue, they've got a forum for it. So that kind of, really is a great example of a more formal process replacing what has been a very informal way of communicating. But informality has its place. You want to have informal social communication and encourage that before and after meetings get together. When you bring a team together, talk for a moment. How's everyone doing? How's family life? What are you guys doing to improve yourself? How are the kids? Make sure that kind of communication happens. There's a tendency sometimes to say we want to get down to business, but right now, even more so, we're replacing that kind of communication that's happening in the hallways, break rooms, in the morning as people are walking in. None of that's happening right now. We've got to find more venues for that kind of communication. And then a key part is, because of that lack of informal nonverbals and incidental communication, you have no idea how well you're going to be doing with your team. And the easiest way to do that is ask them. Ask them for feedback. What can be done better? Is there something we're doing that isn't working? Are these formal forms of communication we put together not working for you? What else can we do? Actually explicitly ask these questions, because once again, where it may have been, it was easy for them to sort of approach you in the hallway or have that discussion in the break room and for it to feel easy to do, none of that exists anymore. Instead, we have to count on formal modes of communication to accomplish that. And that's one of those things to look for. So explicitly ask for it, explicitly ask for feedback, ask for what is going on, and provide people with feedback themselves at that time. So understanding that these are just some of the processes, there's a lot of other things to do, but take that concept of, hey, we need to make formal what a lot of stuff was informal before, because we don't have those informal mechanisms going on as much. There's a lot more problems happening at this point. So then let's apply that to the most common form of interaction we all have right now. And that's the video meeting and working with people and interacting in a video meeting environment. Let's talk about just a few ways that you can make your video meetings better. The first is to be present in the meeting. And I don't just mean log on. One of the problems, as we just discussed, is people are more isolated. They're not running into each other. They're not talking to each other. They can't yell at each other over the cubicle. They can't have birthday parties in the break room. None of that's happening. So people are more isolated, and that means you need to make more of an effort to make sure people see that you care and that you're involved. And nowhere is that more evident when you're getting involved in a video meeting. So a few of the things you can do is make sure you turn on the video. Make sure that you are actually present there. One of the reasons for using video is not just so, oh, look, there's a grid of faces, I can see everybody. But there's a couple of really subtle things happening there. One, there's accountability there. If you've got the video on, then people can see if you're paying attention or not. They can see if you've gotten up and walked away. They can see if you're over on a notepad or a phone doing email or writing something instead of being engaged in the conversation. So turn on the video and then pay attention to it. And that allows you to be present and people to see, oh, hey, they're actually engaging with me. They're working with me. Now, of course, there's a lot more that we are then asked for. And we feel like, oh, man, I could get so much more done if I don't do that. But it's one of the prices we pay in this environment to be able to be more engaged with people is by actually being engaged, by taking the time, by spending it. Another thing is to react to whoever's talking. If you've got the video on, the next piece of this is don't just sit there. Oh, I better not move because everybody's watching me on video. Just like you're in a real conversation, face to face, you still are, you're just doing it through the video system. So make sure that you're reacting. Nod when they say something you agree with, or even shake your head or frown. Give them expression and feedback. Let them know what's happening so that they can go, okay, they're listening to me. They hear me. I get that feedback as they're looking at you, and make sure that that information is going on. And of course, don't multitask. That's part of the be present. Multitasking seems to be such a key part of our engagement. But the thing to understand is Research has shown that humans don't multitask. When you think you're multitasking, you're actually doing what's called task switching. You're moving from your phone and the email to paying attention, to your phone to paying attention, to looking over at this document that you're working on to paying attention. So you're not being present. You are not task switching, not multitasking at all. The human brain literally can't do two tasks that require conscious thought at the same time. We can do something like breathing and talking, but we can't sit there and do all these various pieces unless it moves to a different part of our brain so that we can, walk and chew gum at the same time. But you can't do that with email and listening to somebody who's talking right now. Now, I bet a ton of you are multitasking right now while you're listening to me do this. You're saying, oh, I can do it fine, Evan. But really what's going on is your brain is flopping back and forth. For the technical people on the call, really, the human brain is more like Windows 3.1, where we pretended to have multitasking rather than the operating systems we all have today, where a computer really can do 2 or 3 or 10 tasks at once. But back in the old days of Windows 3.1, it just pretended to do things and switched back and forth through time switching. All right, there's my technical geek moment for you. The last thing that I'll mention with being present is be aware of your mute status. There's nothing more frustrating for everyone to go, your mute is on, we can't hear you, you can't talk to it. Part of being present is being aware of what's going on with the conversation and with your tool set. And so if you're actually present, you're going to know I'm on mute. I'm not on mute. So I'm not on mute and I'm making all sorts of noise and the dog's barking down the hall, or I'm shuffling papers really loudly, or, and I know probably everybody here has even experienced this one, they're not on mute and they're literally on another phone call talking to somebody else and you can hear them. All of these things show that you're not present in the conversation. And so therefore, that's once again disrespectful and isolating to the other people that you're talking to. It starts to make them feel like the whole video conferencing thing isn't working. And it isn't, because you're not really there. You're not really engaged. Now, the flip side of this is we've all got to be a little more accepting, because the work conditions for remote are a little more challenging. You may have pets, you may have kids, there may be other things going on. It's not a dedicated office environment. And so those can bring some more challenges. But that's okay. It just requires us to all take that into account, because every single one of us has to deal with this. So don't judge people if there's some interruptions when the kids come running in. There's a really great video out there on the internet right now of a woman who's very serious on a video call and her husband walks by with no pants on. Let's all laugh together gently and not judge the person for something she had no control over. One of the best incidents that I've heard of recently is an incident where a conference call of 30 or 40 people was going on and somebody's dog started barking in the background. Well, the fun part about this was somebody else's dog started barking. Pretty soon, there was like 20 dogs barking on the call. Everybody had the best reaction possible. They all just started laughing because of the silliness of the situation. And this is going to happen. Let's laugh together and deal with it rather than being judgmental, rather than saying, oh gosh, what are you doing? And why are you making all that noise? And that goes to the other point of providing feedback gently. You let people know what's going on. Don't just let them suffer in silence that they're doing something wrong and they don't even know about it, because that's more embarrassing later. But provide feedback gently with some humor and some laughter maybe. We had an incident the other day that really wasn't a video conference situation, but it still provides a similar example in which somebody clicked, sent an email out to a group that was literally almost 100,000 people. We tried to, gently joke about it, but that person was incredibly embarrassed. They felt really terrible. They sent out an email that wasn't bad. There was no problem with it. It was just an email thread between a couple of people that they managed to send out to this huge, massive group. And by using humor, we made that person feel a little better. That's what we should all be working on, because we're all dealing with these challenges in different ways. Whether it's I've got additional family members, whether I've got pets, whether somebody just comes to the door to deliver something and the doorbell rings right in the middle of me talking. Any of those things could happen to me right now on this call. And we just all need to be accepting. Who knows? My cat might just jump up on the desk at any moment here. No, sorry, I couldn't make that happen. It's a cat. It's not trained. So the last piece that we'll talk about, next to last, is to be engaged. So this is a little different than being present, because being present just means, hey, I'm paying attention. I'm giving you the respect you deserve. You're talking. But being engaged means interacting and involving. We talked a little bit about providing facial expressions and providing feedback, and really that comes over into this be engaged category. But there's some other things. A lot of us tend to just sit quietly and let other people talk and then not get back involved. We can't do that in this environment. We need to deliberately interact. We need to make that extra effort at this point. When somebody asks for questions, respond to them. When somebody says, hey, I want to know what you think, or make sure that you have an answer for them. Silence is just so deadly in the video conferencing space because no one truly knows if you've just tuned out completely or not. Hopefully you're being present and all those things are helping them know that's not the case. But silence is the killer thing. I've done so many webinars over my career, and the worst thing in the world is when I get to the discussion phase and everybody just has nothing left to say. Are they all asleep? Did I cover the topic so incredibly well that no one has any questions? Both of those seem unlikely. So what's going on? So deliberately interact. That's one of those things that you need to do, that extra effort you're going to make this environment work. Another one is to socially engage, to be engaged. And I talked about this a little earlier in policies and procedures, but have some social time before the meetings, at the end of the meetings. Ask about people's families. How are they doing? We've all got common concerns right now. We're all getting a little bit stir crazy, sitting at home all the time, maybe dealing with being cooped up with family for too long, not able to find things at the grocery store. It's really easy to find topics that everybody can relate to right now because we're all going through a lot of stuff. So be able to engage in that and ask questions and see how people are going on really helps a lot to make everyone feel a little less isolated, feel a little together, and that engagement will really help the whole process. And part of this also is try to be a little bit less formal, have more fun with things. I talked about laughing together and being a little gentler. It's very valuable to not have to be just, like I said, get down to business. We're going to go through this and only work one way. Have that little less formality and have a little more fun during the meeting. And that will help the whole process go along. Another thing to do is to ask questions. This is like the interaction piece. Make sure, and as people are talking, like I'm doing right now, grab a pen and paper and just say, oh, hey, here's something I could ask about later on, and write it down, because everybody always has questions. But the number one thing I see in meetings is people think of them and then they go out of their head. So go ahead and write them down so that you, at the appropriate time, can ask the question, interact with people. As a leader or manager, or even just the person who's responsible for holding a meeting, you've got more responsibility. And when you're doing an online meeting, you've got to make the extra effort, just like everything else we've been talking about. So a few things to consider here is consider what you can be handled by other forms of communication. And this is really key. I've asked all the people who are in the meeting to be present, to pay attention, to spend the time. You can be considerate to them in the other direction by making sure that stuff that can be handled by an email, a chat, a collaboration room, an update status list. You don't need to have everybody sit in a room where everyone just reads off their status. Do that by email and just hit the key points that actually involve discussion and interaction in the live meeting. That's being respectful of people's time. So figure out what you can push off to other forms of communication. I mean, you can take this to some extremes. One of those really common practices that you've probably heard of before is, for example, at Amazon, before they have a meeting, the person who is going to be talking or presenting at the meeting needs to provide a memo that everyone reads that provides all the key facts. That means that everybody comes into the memo informed about the topic and ready to talk and discuss. You don't necessarily have to go to that length, but that's an example of what we're talking about here, making sure that the meeting itself is interactive and about the discussion and isn't just, I've got to listen to Jane talk about everything that went on with the supply chain yesterday. I could do that by reading an email or by being involved in a collaboration room where Jane provides an update. That doesn't have to be a face-to-face discussion. The next part, and this seems really self-evident, but I've seen over the years so many people not do this. Have an agenda for the meeting. Know what you're going to talk about. Write it down step by step so that you can go through it. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be utter formal and go, okay, item 3 on the agenda is this. Remember, informality is one of those things that will help us and that can be worthwhile here. But do have the agenda to make sure that we're getting through everything and we know when we're done, and then making sure that we cover all the information that needs to be there. If something comes up that's not on the agenda, my personal suggestion is schedule another meeting to talk about that. Don't get involved in the trap of getting off on a side topic, especially when it doesn't involve everybody in the room. as the leader, suggest that people set up another meeting and have that discussion, and then move on back to the key topics of this discussion that involves everybody who's talking. Another one, and this is just simple, arrive a little bit early. Part of this is not, hey, look, I want to be the first one there, but more about, I want to make sure all the technology works. Make sure that your camera is working correctly. I was talking with somebody yesterday who had 5 minutes of fumbling around with their camera, and what was going on is they had a laptop, just like I do, and their video conferencing software had selected the internal camera on the laptop, and the laptop was closed. They were using it with a docking station, so all I saw was black. If you arrive early, you can make sure, hey, my video image works. Yes, people can hear me. Oh, I'll look behind me and make sure that everything's cleaned up and people aren't seeing, where my cat made a mess or something like that behind me. You can do all that if you arrive early and make sure that that's all straightened out. Make sure you've got your agenda together and do all those things. These seem self-evident, but they're much more important in a video conferencing world because there's a lot more things that can go wrong with all the technology pieces. Here's another one that may seem self-evident, but try and be interesting. Try and make sure that everybody can stay present, can be engaged with you. If you're boring and dry and just going through a list, one of those things we probably shouldn't do according to my other earlier rules, then people are going to tune out. That's what causes people to multitask, to turn off their cameras, to go work on something else. The flip side of them being engaged and being present is that you need to be interesting and say important stuff and make sure the conversation is something that they're involved in. And that way they're paying off their effort that they're making. And the last one I would suggest is take these simple steps, be accepting, be engaged, be present, and encourage people to use them as well. Remind them that these are good ways to make sure that a meeting is successful. And I'm sure you can come up with some other ones that are specific to your organization, but encourage people to use those rules. Send them out ahead of time. Mention it to people. Call up when people do a good job within the meeting. These are all things that will make a more productive environment within your organization. So I hope that's helpful to you as you're running video meetings out there. And I hope those are kind of things that can help you have slightly more productive meetings because we're all in them. I was talking to a friend of mine who has 13 meetings today. That's painful. That's probably where some of his superiors should be considering what can be handled by other forms of communication, don't you think? So let's move on to some technical concerns. I'm not going to get into really specific stuff because it can depend upon what platform you have, but we are going to hit some things that cover everything. The first one I want to talk about is solution reliability. A lot of people have really quickly scrambled to go get a new remote work solution, moving phones home, providing video conferencing, a chat and unified communications platform. How do we move our other software pieces? And they've had to do it in a very quick hurry. Now may be the time to turn around and look at the solution and figure out how it can be done better. Even before we had all these people moving home, SoftChoice had done a study of remote workers and found that 78% of them had real technical problems collaborating with other people. And these really impacted the end of their work environment. So solution reliability becomes incredibly important, especially now in an environment where we've rushed people home. We have to start turning back and seeing what do we need to do to make things more successful. And one of the key ones is make sure whatever solution you're using across the board to provide your capabilities to your remote workers, it has to be reliable. There should be a solution that has multiple locations, preferably a cloud solution at this point for multiple data centers because they've got a lot more vested interest in providing a highly reliable solution. But don't just look for something that says it's cloud. Look for something that is proactively monitored. That means that somebody has a team that is always making sure that the service is up, that it is available, that is testing, that is looking for problems, and has abilities to proactively work around it. Look for a solution where there's a regular testing regime. If it's something in-house, make sure your IT team says, yes, we're going to test this. We're going to do failover. We're going to work with this on a weekly, monthly basis. Here's the schedule. Because if something is not tested, then you don't have a reliability solution. If you're buying something from a third-party vendor, ask really probing questions about what's going on here. You don't have to know a lot about the technology, but you have to know when they test and how they test and how often that works. If their test is just in a lab environment, that's no good. It needs to be out in production. They need to have the courage of their convictions to say, I am making sure that this all works. They also need to have a backup plan for what happens when the last mile connection fails. So you've got all these at-home workers now. What happens when they no longer have a connection? That may be up to you to plan that. That may be something that the vendor provides, but you've got to make sure that that's in place, because an extended internet connection can take away all of your workers' ability to work. And find yourself a service provider who can help you with remote workers. You can provide support. It's a whole different environment. It's a little tougher. You need something to work that way. And also make sure that your solution itself is easy to use. I bring that up particularly because one of the number one things that we see as a cause of these technical problems that SoftChoice is talking about are not that there's any problems with the solution at all. It's just it's hard to use. They can't figure it out. They can't figure out how to get to the feature or to use the capability. There's some part of the user interface that doesn't make sense. So easy to use is more important than you think. It's not just a nice to have. It really means the difference between productive, successful remote workers and those who aren't. And if all of this sounds really hard and difficult, and you're like, hey, I don't know if I want to deal with this, I don't, or, my IT department has enough other issues going on with all the changes, I'm having to downsize because of cost and expense, then this is the one little commercial I'm going to make in this whole webinar. Vertical can help you with all this stuff. We do this every day. This is what our expertise is. We can make sure all these problems are solved. So contact us and we can help you out with this one. Now, part of what I just talked about was, what happens when the internet for your local remote workers go down, their last mile connection, their Comcast cable modem, their Verizon Fios. What do you do in that situation? Network connectivity is one of the keys to the success or failure of remote workers, and it's really, really important. You've got to have a quality, stable network connection. It's got to be very, very reliable. It's got to be fast. It's got to have what's called low latency and low jitter, because those are terms that have to deal with video conferencing and voice over IP voice to make sure that these things work. If you don't have that, then you're going to have unhappy, frustrated workers who can't do their job. And you can't just leave it to them and say, well, you're working at home. It's your network connection now. You've got to be involved. You've got to be invested in what's going on. One of the ways you can do this is by having the right tool set, having the right capabilities to help you with the network. So don't leave the quality of the network at their house to the employee. Use a network assessment tool to validate. There are a number of them that you can just email a tool. They can run it on their PC. It will give you a report back. It will tell you problems with the hardware, with the internet connection itself. And this can be very, very valuable to making you aware of, oh, maybe I need to upgrade their connection. Maybe I need to pay them a little bit so that they can have a quality connection. Another option is a technology called SD-WAN. SD-WAN basically means software-defined wide area network. You really don't need to know that. The key thing here is it's a way to centrally manage all of those connections out there at your remote user's workplace. You put a box on site for a reasonably low price. It can be had for less than $100, $200 a month. And that capability allows you to control what's going on at their site. You can even potentially use cell data backup. Everybody's using their cell phones for email, for all sorts of data applications. Well, the network that connects this is good enough that for a single worker, you can often be able to provide all of their data needs, including and up to voice and video in a lot of places. So this can be your backup connection that the SD-WAN solution can help you with. And that means that internet outage that I was talking about earlier can just go away as a problem. But think about this, because if you have 100 workers and only 1% of them has problems, but that means that you've got one of your staff every day who's got problems. That's going to be a real problem for you. That's going to be a real difficulty and an issue. And the number one thing that's going to cause it are these internet connections. So think, apply, consider evaluating them with network assessments, figure out what the plan is, and work through that. Consider that you're going to have to own some of their home internet connections now. That's one of the pieces of this and one of the trade-offs of having everybody working remote right now. Another concern is looking at security. Security becomes a whole different beast when you have workers working at home. So you want to know if all the data in all your applications are encrypted. That means it's protected so that somebody can't just put a thumb drive in your employee's laptop and walk off with company files. Is it encrypted at rest? In other words, on the hard drive in the laptop? Is it encrypted in motion when it goes from your home worker's computer out to the internet, to a cloud service, to a server at your premise location? How is it protected in that way? What kind of data is actually stored in the local device? Are you using something where everybody's working in a web browser and there's no real local information? It's all stored on a web server somewhere? Or is there information that's downloaded? Do they have a local file copy? Is it synced? And if so, what is the security of the computer or laptop they're using at their home? If that's a concern, if there is local data, then you have to ask, well, how is that data device stored at home? How important is the data that's kept there? Do I need to worry about how it's accessed? Do I need to worry about how it's left? If somebody just leaves their computer running and logged in all the time, that can be really a concern. So you have to then look at log in and log out policies. Do you have policies? Can you control their machine to the point where you can automatically log them out after a time so you can guarantee that that machine doesn't sit there open and available? And then you have to think about the security of the home network. I know this is a lot, but these are real concerns to think about. And what I mean by the security of the home network is if you're sending information back and forth, especially if the information is not encrypted in motion, in other words, moving between the laptop and somewhere else, like when somebody enters information into a form or when you have a voice over IP phone call. Are those things encrypted while they're moving? If not, you need to look at the security of the home network. You need to know, are they using Wi-Fi? And if so, is it an open Wi-Fi network where somebody could just stand outside the house and join the Wi-Fi network and see everything that's going on? There are some services where people can literally walk up to the outside of the house and just plug into the network. For example, I had Verizon Fios for a long time when I lived in Maryland. All Verizon Fios customers have an integrated access device on the outside of the house, and part of it is an Ethernet connection that you can just plug into. Now, it's meant for a technician to walk up on the outside of the house, not even have to go into the customer's premise and be able to check and make sure everything's okay. But anybody can plug into that, and all of a sudden, they're having access to everything going in and out of the home internet connection with no effort whatsoever. So you have to think about these things. It depends on how much security is important. Or if you're dealing with legal issues, if you're a medical organization, these become much bigger. If you're a governmental organization, they can become much bigger deals than, hey, look, I'm not doing anything that's critical. I don't have any confidential patient information or even customer information that I'm worried about. So you have to evaluate how important the security is. But there are a host of new concerns that you have to think about. And a close cousin of these is thinking about confidentiality, because this work environment is very different. Who else in the house is able to hear conversations? It might be children. It might be the rest of the family. If you're working in a highly confidential frame of business, for example, a lawyer, you may be required not to allow people to hear the conversations that are going on. So now you don't just have to think about, do I close the door? Do I talk quietly? You actually have to think about, is there soundproofing needed? Is there additional problems that I have to solve here? Do I need to think through this? It may be as simple as I'm doing a confidential contract negotiation for my company between us and a new business partner. Do I want other people to hear about that? So this is a new concern because generally you don't have a bunch of family members running around your office. Another problem is our homes are filled with smart devices now. We have Amazon Echoes and other speech assistants, Siri, Google Assistant, Cortana. I think Microsoft is getting rid of Cortana now. But anyway, there's lots of them out there, and all of them are just waiting and listening for you to talk. The problem is to be able to listen and make sure that they're hearing your keyword, they can pull snippets of what is being said and record them and send them back to servers at Apple, at Google, at Amazon, etc. So if you're having confidential conversations, you've got to make sure that these devices cannot possibly hear you, because you never know what they're going to actually hear, record, and keep at a third-party servers. If, once again, you're an attorney or a doctor, this becomes incredibly important because those conversations are legally protected, and you have to have a concern of where that information might go. It's not just a matter of turning the devices off in your office, though that's an important first start, but thinking about what might be just down the hall that can hear you, especially if you're a loud talker like me, where everybody in the house can hear you when you talk. Additional concerns that the staff member is going to have to think about, because it's impossible for the company to look at all those different categories. You may have to put in policies, but you're going to have to put the responsibility on the staff member itself. The final technical concern is equipment. So we've got all sorts of equipment that we now need. We need headsets and cameras like the one I'm using right now. We need to get voice over IP phones that can go home. And now if you've already got a system in the office that has voice over IP phones, it's a matter of, oh, hey, just pick them up, take them home, plug them in. Great, we're all taken care of. except for you may need a power supply that you never needed before. At the office, you may be using a power over Ethernet switch that powers that phone through its network connection. Probably don't have one of those at home. I mean, I have 3, but I'm not the average person here. The average home worker does not even know what power over Ethernet is, and so a power supply is necessary. And another one that goes along with that, they may not know what an Ethernet cable is, so a Wi-Fi connection of some kind. Either the phone has built-in Wi-Fi, or there's a Wi-Fi dongle that you can get to plug in and be able to make the phone Wi-Fi capable. So all of these pieces of equipment are at need right now, and everybody needs them. And so this is a real problem. If you haven't already gone through all of this, which most people have, you've probably run into the problem that they're back ordered, or that you may find that there's severe price gouging going on, that people are taking advantage of this and spending, turning prices to where I've seen cameras that used to be $50 go for over $200, $300. So this can be much more difficult. One of the things that Vertical can help you with is navigating this and finding the equipment you need. But it is difficult right now, and it can be very expensive just because of the sheer demand that's going on out there. So I want to finish up by talking about long term. So we've moved everybody home. We've put everybody in remote offices. I've been working for remote for over 10 years, and I have a lot of experience with this. One of the things that I think we need to consider is we've spent all the time and effort. We've moved everyone home. We've made sure we've got the tools and processes and procedures. I've given you some new ideas today, hopefully, on things you can do to improve that process further. We're learning how to manage remote workers. Why not keep them there? One of the things that we're all going to have to face is the economy is in a difficult situation. We're all going to have to look at ways to be more cost effective and to reduce costs. And one of the biggest things that we found when in implementing remote work is there's massive cost savings potentially to be had. Let's talk about a little bit about that, but let's talk about some of the other values that we see, such as employee productivity and hiring and retention. So you can start thinking about the fact of, yes, we need everyone at home for this crisis, but maybe we keep them there because there's a lot of benefits to our organization. First and simplest is real estate. Real estate costs a lot of money. It's one of the biggest fixed expenses on anyone's P&L. Vertical managed to save over $2 million a year just by moving most of our staff home and closing offices around the country. We've seen no loss in productivity. We haven't had any problems with that, and we've saved a lot of money. We're not the only ones. Dell, Microsoft, Aetna, HP, all of these have saved a huge amount of money by reducing their real estate, by moving people home and using the tool set that we're all using right now. They went through all the difficulties, the policies and procedures and the nightmares that we're all going through right now to realize just these cost savings. Well, you've already done that. Now it's time to turn around and consider the cost savings. Maybe you don't renew that lease. Maybe you just go ahead and close that office and leave people where they are, continuing to work, but in the remote environment that they've become used to. Because now you're beginning to understand what it takes to do those things, you can realize the savings. And this will help you in this tighter economy that we're all moving into, and this tougher situation can be a major expense savings. But there's a lot of other ones to consider. So working remotely, even 50% of the time, has been found to save a company an average of $11,000 annually per worker. So per worker, it's $11,000. And you're thinking, well, what the heck is that? Well, if you move all these people remote, it's not just real estate that you can think about saving. It's things like office supplies. It's things like being able to have the medical kit in the break room. The break room supplies themselves. Coffee. How much people spend on coffee for our offices every year? It's astounding. Electricity and janitorial services and all these other pieces that are hidden costs of the office space can be saved, and there can be significant reduction in cost without reducing headcount and without reducing the true productivity of your staff. In fact, we'll see in a moment that productivity tends to go up with remote teams. There's less equipment to buy and maintain. Copiers, printers, other pieces of office equipment don't have to be maintained, and that can generally save a company on average $3,000 a year. If you're an office with multiple locations around the company and you start moving to an all-remote environment, then you can save an average of $100,000 per worker not relocated. That's a major savings right there, especially if you're moving people around. If everyone becomes remote, the fact that they used to have to work in the Las Vegas office and now they should work in the Los Angeles office becomes a little moot at that point. And then travel expenses. More remote environment, the ability to communicate, to do video conferences like we're doing right now, The fact that none of us are traveling right now is going to be saving all of our organizations a lot of money right there. So there are real hard dollar costs to look at. There's a lot of things we're saving. And that's one of those considerations we should put into effect. But we should also think about employee productivity. The numbers are huge. AT&T estimates that their remote workers save work 5 or more hours more than their office workers. Now, this goes back to that earlier, hey, look, we need to set hours because remote workers tend to overwork. But if you think about it, if their commute is 30 minutes to an hour each way, that's an hour to 2 hours you're giving back. It's okay if they're working some of that for the company. They've already lost that time, that you're getting that back. And so it can be a win-win for both the employee as well as the company to think about this. So commute time is what Sun Microsystems saved, but even just the workers themselves, when they're working at home, report increased productivity, increased effectiveness, and more success just by working at home. This goes along with the fact that they're working more of the days of the week. There's less illness involved. It's not that they're less sick, it's that they call in less. Hey, one of those things to check on there, right? So it's definitely one of those situations where if you have remote workers, you are going to have a less a tendency for them to have to call in sick, because it's much easier to be able to still work with a mild cold or with a minor medical appointment and still be able to work the rest of the day if you're working at home. It may be a much bigger deal to go into the office. So what we've seen actually from the American Management Association is that workers who work at home report 63% fewer unscheduled absences. That's a huge number. So that's just work days that you're getting back, where people can continue to work when they're mildly ill. They just have, a cold or a cough or something like that. They don't feel like coming to the office, but they can still do work. A friend of mine worked all day from bed, for example. That's entirely doable. Not many people are working all day from bed when they go into the office. So you get back time and you get back days of the year that people would instead be not working at all from home. But the other part about that is that person with that minor illness stays at home and doesn't infect the rest of the staff. If you have a cough or you just have a running nose or something like that, you may have an illness that isn't a big deal to you, but can really affect somebody else. Sick remote workers don't infect other people in the organization. And that leads to a knock-on effect where not only do you have reduced absenteeism from the worker himself, but from everybody else that they work with. Another piece of this is until the massive dislocation that we've seen in the recent weeks, we've had a very, very great job market for those looking for work. We've only had a 3.7% unemployment rate. The job market has been in the best shape it's been in for years, once again, until the last month or so. And we expect after this economic dislocation for much of this to reoccur. We've seen that hiring managers say that they had a hard time getting the right person, especially in the tech market. And one of the great things about this is remote work attracts job seekers. People hold remote working as one of their top priorities. They are things that they will seek even over a higher salary or increased benefits. And in fact, 74% of employees say they would quit their current job if they could go get a remote work position. People want to work at home. There is a real appeal to it. There's real value to it. And so by offering it, you can make sure and attract people. Now you'd say, oh, well, Kevin, the job market's changed. We've got a lot fewer people. But here's the thing. Not only does it allow you to attract job seekers in general, it allows you to expand your hiring pool. So if you do still have those positions where it's difficult to find the right talent for, by offering remote work, you no longer have to look in just one geographic location. You don't have to look on the north side of Atlanta, or, hey, look, I'm in this part of Los Angeles, or look, I'm in the South Bay in San Francisco. Now you can hire from anywhere in the state, potentially the country, or possibly even the world. And that gives you more opportunities to find those people with obscure, difficult to find skills, the person you really need with that specific role. You can find all of them. And you no longer have the restrictions of, well, we want you to come into this one specific office in this one specific area. We're all working remotely. It can work. It can operate. There can be real advantages in expanding your hiring pool to find the person you need. But not only can you find them, you can lever out your salaries to an extent. The extreme cost in some areas of salaries have become ridiculous. New York, San Francisco, Austin, these places have just gotten to be absolutely ridiculous on their salaries. But there are people with many of the same skill sets in much less obvious cities. Louisville, Kentucky is a great town. I used to live there. In Jacksonville, Florida, Richmond, Virginia are places where you can find much lower average tech job salaries and a lot of other high demand salaries. If you hire people in those areas, you can bring your average payroll down without any loss in capability. It's just the matter that you had to have somebody come into that specific office that was down near the wharf in San Francisco that was really making your payroll go sky high. So maybe reconsider that and think about, if we just keep everyone remote, maybe we can begin to cut our expenses without having to cut workforce by spreading out where we're hiring from. But this doesn't just help you with hiring people, it also helps you with retaining workers. Fascinating statistic is that most people within an organization would see remote work as one of the things that would make them stay with the company. People would be more likely to not go seek new business if they can work remotely at your organization. They might not go look for another job. So you can retain workers, and those are the ones that you want more than anything else because they've got all of the knowledge and skill set. The stats are just overwhelming on why people would want to do this. They're less stressed in a remote work environment. They feel like they have a better work-life balance. They feel like they are in better position to deal with family care. All of these things are helpful. And there's a lot of other benefits you can get out of this. You can have a more diverse workforce. We see that over half the remote workforce before this recent dislocation was women. You can have easier ADA compliance because you no longer have to think about taking an office and refitting it to meet ADA guidelines. People can work at their home, and if they have a disability, hopefully their home is already accommodated for that disability, and you don't have to think about doing a whole bunch of changes. So that allows you to feel more comfortable and with less cost of hiring more disabled workers. Or remote workforce is one where this can be a lot more valuable. You can have a broader set of viewpoints from across the country. You don't have to have everybody who has the same "we all live in this one city" kind of viewpoint. You can have people from all over the country involved in your organization, and that makes a more interesting organization as a whole. There's a ton of reasons to do this, so seriously consider. And if you want to talk about this more, we've got experts from Vertical who are happy to have a conversation with you. Why it makes sense, not just to have moved your workforce home today, but to keep them there in the future. So I hope this conversation has been useful. I hope we've seen a number of things that will help you as you're working with your remote workforce today. Additional policies and procedures, some technical things to start looking at now that you've accomplished the initial move, but also some reasons why you might want to keep your workforce home for the long term. Let's finish up by looking at any questions or concerns that you might have. As Rebecca pointed out before, you can add them in the chat box.